Hello, everybody, and welcome to World Politics. I'm Nick Palavito. I will not be your host today, but I'll try to moderate. Maybe I'll be the circus leader because the circus has come to town, as we know that Donald Trump has taken the stage center once again, ripping off the national news with his latest trial, which there's various different opinions on. So first of all, we're going to bring in our people from around the country. Rick Rosner from the Los Angeles area, former writer for Jimmy Kimmel Live. He'll give us some updates on the Donald, who's once again front and center on world politics. Up in Canada, we have, of course, Sasha Starr, who gives us the report on what's going on and how the world looks in them. And of course, then we have our professor of law, Adam Lamparero, who is fair and unbalanced, or fair and balanced, whatever it might be, who will also give us an opinion because obviously the person who's take front and center is Donald Trump. Now, I listened to The View today, which is about left of, I guess, Mao Zedong, I guess you might want to say. In other words, the Communist Party has nothing over The View. And, of course, they hammered Donald Trump, hammered him into the ground. They crucified him. They put his hands up blood. Then I just got off of my group in Utah, and they're full of it. They had to retroactively change the law to prosecute Trump, and they're running around. This is just a political prosecution once again. So, Adam, what are your thoughts on this sense from a legal standpoint? Did we create what they call an ex post facto law, changing the statute of limitations to bring in Donald Trump? And was this another political move by the Democrats? I'm sure you've been following it. So please enhance us with the sea of knowledge as we are basking in a desert of ignorance about this case with the Donald.
This case is incredibly weak. It's an unprecedented application of the law, and it's politically motivated. Essentially, Donald Trump is on trial for a non-crime because he didn't do anything wrong. First, every single day, people enter into non-disclosure agreements. It's perfectly legal. Now, the claim that Trump falsified his business records by calling it legal retainer instead of a non-disclosure agreement, well, let's assume that's true. That's only a misdemeanor under New York law, and the statute of limitations for that misdemeanor has long expired. So to get Trump into court, they had to concoct this scheme, the Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg, whereby he said that the falsifying of the business records was for the sole purpose of influencing the election. Well, that's simply not true. And New York law is clear. If your purpose is to influence the election by falsifying business records, and you have another purpose, in other words, there's multiple purposes, then as a matter of law, you must be acquitted. Well, we know here there's multiple purposes. Even assuming he was trying to influence the election, he was doing it to protect his family, to hide the fact that he had an affair, and to avoid the embarrassment of disclosure to him personally. So as a matter of law, this case should be dismissed, and I suspect a jury, even in liberal New York City, will acquit.
Well, would it be the jury that would acquit him, or would it actually be the judge? If it's an operation of law, shouldn't the judge make a decision that this case should be dismissed under a summary judgment?
It should be dismissed, and it would likely be dismissed on appeal. But the problem is, in New York City, you have very liberal judges like Judge Engoron, who issued that ridiculous fine of $450 million. You have Judge Merchan here, whose daughter raises money for the Democratic Party, and in fact relied upon this case and a conviction of Trump to incentivize donors to give money. So it's a political and a selective prosecution, but the law ultimately at the end of the day is going to win out, and he will not be sent to prison. And if he's convicted, it will be overturned, just like the Colorado Supreme Court was overturned 9-0 when they tried to put Trump off the ballot.
So
Yeah,
I
and
believe
we
that if
predicted
he's a
that
first
quite-
time, if he's found
Yeah,
guilty as a
yeah,
first time offender, that he probably won't get prison. That he might get a few months of jail. That it's not something that sends people to prison for first time offenses.
Yeah, and he would probably get house arrest, but they would stay at pending appeal. But I even think with a liberal jury, even with a liberal jury, the law is on Trump's side because they have to prove that his sole purpose in covering up this affair was to influence the election. But his purpose was multifactorial, and that ends the case.
Well, I mean, the timing supports the claim that his purpose was to help with the election, because he
Okay,
banged her.
But that's okay. He's allowed to do that. He's allowed to do that if there's multiple purposes, which there are. And I also question the discretion of the Manhattan District Attorney to bring a case that at the end of the day involves an affair with a porn star that a politician was trying to cover up. This is what you want to try a former president of the United States for? It is absolutely ridiculous, and it shows how political the legal system has become, and that's bad for our country.
They impeached Bill Clinton for lying about BJ's in the White House.
Yeah,
So
but
He
that
shouldn't
was
have.
an
Oh, I
impeachment.
agree with you. That was wrong too.
That was an impeachment, not a criminal trial. But at the same time, doesn't he have this as a strategy that he brings that up as a summary judgment motion? They haven't got that far because they haven't selected a jury yet. But once they do that, they could bring that up on summary judgment. They could lose it and then mark it for appeal. And all of a sudden, this case just drags on. Is that a possibility, Adam? I mean, if I was a defending attorney, that's what I would do. I would bring up what you just said on a summary judgment motion. And then if you lost it, just file an appeal on the summary judgment. An interlocutory appeal.
Yeah, that typically only applies to civil trials. In criminal trials, I think what you're referring to is a motion to dismiss the indictment, which has already been denied. And appeals courts typically don't grant interlocutory appeals from denials of motions. Yeah.
Right. So the thing is, it has to go all the way through the system before you mark it for appeal. I can tell you, here's my experience doing criminal work. 0. Because the law firm I worked with years ago said, we're not going to take two types of cases. We will not take criminal. We will not take divorce work. So because of that, I just never did any. And I remember I made one, I did something like that in a court. The judge goes, oh, that's for, criminal work. That's not for civil, because you mix your federal rules of civil procedure. Which
I have experience. Okay, but I've done one lawsuit and I lost it on summary judgment. I sued
the thing is, on civil cases right now, less than 7% will actually see a jury. So the thing is, the best chance, what happens with most cases, they're decided by operation of law. If you looked what happened in Trump's first case, it never went to a jury. Judge Egeron took the whole case. Seriously. He made the ruling on there's so many different ways to reverse that on appeal. It's not funny. He made a ruling on summary judgment. You're guilty, and you're supposed to have no justiciable issues, law and fact, and light most favorable to the non-moving party. Well, he had a disclaimer. Any moron could say a disclaimer in there, could throw that whole case out. But Judge Egeron said, nope, he's guilty by law. And
you don't want to go to trial. It's bad.
It never went to a jury. It was Judge Egeron who was the judge, jury, and the executioner. And I think that's the reason the appellate court remitted it down to $175 million. But frankly, that might be all gone. I mean, forget that case. But this one I thought was more serious because of the money and the transportation of the money by Mr. Cohen. But now you come across another interesting thing. Can Cohen testify against Trump? Or does attorney-client privilege stand when he's disbarred? So what are your thoughts on that, Adam? That'll come down eventually, but that'll be interesting. What's your thoughts?
Cohen can still testify. I suspect there was a waiver of attorney-client privilege, but Michael Cohen is a serial perjurer. He has lied in court. He has lied to Congress. He has gone to prison for tax evasion. He has zero credibility. But again, when you look at the legal merits of the case, this case is exceptionally weak and quite frankly never should have been brought. The statute of limitations expired on the business on the falsification of business records, so it can't be brought. The idea that Trump did this intentionally to influence the election, and that was his sole motive, and he had no other motive, not to protect his family, not to protect his own reputation, not to avoid the embarrassment of disclosure to his wife, is ridiculous. And that's why he's going to be acquitted if this jury has any semblance of honesty and integrity.
Well, don't they have another problem with ex post facto laws? Because this is criminal, not civil. And when you pass a law and now all of a sudden you're bringing somebody in on a crime, which previously was not a crime, won't you have ex post facto as a defense?
I don't think there's ex post facto concerns here because they didn't create a new law to convict him. What they did was they pieced together existing laws in an unprecedented way to try to convict him because they knew the statute of limitations had run. And it clearly was a political move because even Alvin Bragg, like Letitia James, ran on the premise of getting Trump. So they basically invented a new legal theory, but they were using existing law. So ex post facto is not germane.
So being not an expert on this at all, I like looking to the Vegas odds to see what they think.
Vegas odds, that's good. Right.
So for this case, the odds, you can bet $1, and if he is found guilty of fewer than 5 charges out of the 34 charges, you get $2.50 back. That includes, zero, found guilty of 0 charges. So it's less than a 50% chance that he's probably a 25% chance that he's found not guilty of everything. Then more than that, you get 2 other categories. Between 5 and 24 charges, you get $275 back. All more than 26 charges, you get $275 back. So Vegas thinks that it's 80% likely he's found guilty of at least 1 charge in this thing.
Well, the problem with that is he cannot be found guilty of simply falsifying business records.
Right, because that's
the statute of limitations is run. So they either have to find him guilty of everything or guilty of nothing. And they should find him guilty of nothing. That's the right result. And everybody deserves equal justice under the law. That includes Donald Trump.
So,
and by the way, for people who don't know Adam Lamparero, besides teaching as a lawyer, he actually, over 3 years ago, predicted correctly the overturning of Roe versus Wade. And it's all recorded on Lawyer's Den. So I was very impressed. He goes, it's got to be overturned. I'm going it's been precedents for 40 years. And he was right. It did get overturned.
Well,
so you do definitely want to listen to this guy over here.
All right, one more point in favor of Trump being found guilty of at least some charges is prosecutors, DAs, the whole apparatus. They don't like they don't like people getting off. They only bring cases if they think they have a 90% chance of winning because it's humiliating and could even affect their, whether they keep their jobs. So they think that they've got a super good chance of him being convicted on some of this stuff.
But Rick, that's not the case here because the purpose of them bringing these charges is not to win. The purpose of them bringing them is to tarnish Trump's reputation and themselves influence the election. They're doing precisely what they're accusing Trump of doing, and it's because they want to keep him from the White House.
I tend to disagree because why would they put their jobs on the line just to it seems like in that case it seems like a low reward, hurting Trump versus a high risk activity, which is why people, individual people don't engage in voter fraud because it's low reward, high risk.
But are they really putting their jobs on the line?
No.
All the people that are in this to win this, even if they lose it because of their high publicity, they're going to win on the NIL deals, name, image, and likeness deals. In other words, basically, even Letitia James, who ever heard of this lady until the Trump case? Did you ever hear of her, Adam? I mean, she's a nobody.
But their jobs are certainly secure.
So even if they lose their job, they'll make so much on the speaking circuit, it won't matter. So I don't think they're putting their jobs on the line at all, Rick. It'll enhance the reputation, win or lose.
Okay.
And Rick, they're in the liberal bubble there in New York City. So this is being driven by more people than Alvin Bragg. Alvin Bragg actually didn't want to prosecute this case, and the Southern District of New York and the Justice Department decided not to prosecute it either. It was political pressure that got him to do this for the purpose of tarnishing Trump so he wouldn't get back to the White House. I don't think a lack of a conviction hurts him. I think the high reward for him is just by virtue of going through the process and trying to ruin Trump's reputation. That is election interference. That is unduly influencing an election, and that is precisely what they're accusing Trump of. They should be ashamed.
So having gotten,
they are the least.
So
they are
having
antithetical to democracy.
You've beaten me in this argument, so I have to move on to. I have to distract with something else, which is that
this could backfire.
Yeah, for the past 2 days, Trump has kind of done the head nodding, falling, trying not to fall asleep thing in court. So he's now earned the Twitter hashtag Sleepy Don or Don Snorleone.
Well, of course, but the thing is, it's boring, and you have to imagine, and he does have a point, why Biden's on the campaign trail, he's in the courtroom, okay? But at the same time, he's also he's smart enough to realize he's going to use the courtroom as his campaign. And he knows that the conservative press is going to pick this up. And if they don't win or they do win, he's going to spin it going the other direction. So, but also I can also tell you this: it can be really boring to listen to 10 hours of voir dire. I mean, give me a break. And after a while, he's not a young guy. He gets tired and will go to sleep.
There's a trick when you have to have a polygraph test. It probably doesn't work, but you put a thumbtack in your shoe, and every time you answer a question, you put pressed down so you're stabbed, and it makes your reactions all kind of uniformly, so they can't tell whether you're telling the truth or not. But they should do this. He should have a thumbtack in his shoe, and every time he starts to fall asleep, he should stomp down on it so the discomfort wakes him up.
Yeah, and
go on.
Well, if you're ever in a criminal trial, it's no surprise that people fall asleep. It is incredibly boring. But let's think about one thing. When the jury pool was called yesterday, 96 jurors were present. Half of them had to be dismissed immediately because they said that they could not be unbiased. Trump is facing the most unfair and unequal prosecution that I've ever seen in a city that hates him, with a judge that can't stand him, and a daughter who represents and recruits for the Democratic Party. 50 people, because they couldn't be unbiased. And how many of the remaining 46 do you think lied that they could be unbiased? This trial should have never been brought as a matter of law and as a matter of fairness.
So New York has 5 boroughs, and they were breaking this down on MSNBC. That if they're all Manhattan jurors, Manhattan voted for Biden over Trump like 86 to 13%.
And it's all Manhattan jurors.
Oh, what about Staten Island? Because Staten Island voted for Trump 57% to 40%.
And that's where the trial should have been moved to have a more balanced jury.
Yeah, it's interesting, though, what you're saying about the judge. You're saying the judge's daughter works for the Democratic Party. Is that correct, Adam?
Yeah, the judge's daughter on her Twitter page, which has now been scraped, had a picture of Trump behind bars. And she raises millions of dollars for the Democratic Party. And she relied upon this case as one of the many reasons to incentivize people to donate. That's disgusting.
You can't hold the judge. You can't. What his daughter does doesn't have to do with the judge. You can't.
The optic is not good, though.
What about all the daughters who become strippers because they hate their dads?
That's different because there's not a conflict of interest.
Of impropriety. You want to avoid even the appearance of impropriety. And that's the technical aspect. And see, that doesn't pass the appearance of impropriety because in the area I work with pensions, you have family attribution rules, whether you like it or not. Your father and your children, at least lineal and collateral, they're considered basically you for pension purposes. Now, they don't have this in judge ethics, from what I understand, judicial ethics. But you have potential how you say, not avoiding even the appearance of impropriety if a son or daughter works for a particular party that you're going up against. So I think
Yeah.
the judge probably should recuse themselves. But I've also seen a trend in the judicial profession where they don't recuse themselves. They go, I can be independent, even though my daughter and my wife and all my kids are hardcore.
At
Trump
which
haters.
point you have to bring up Clarence Thomas and
Clarence Thomas, but not only that, but
Well, let me ask you guys a question. Everything that I've said in the previous 20 minutes, if you went to MSNBC, you would have never heard anything about this, about the legal merits of it, about the politics. If you went to CNN, you would have never heard anything about it.
And definitely it wasn't on The View.
They are the purveyors of misinformation. And just like Bragg is doing exactly what he accuses Trump of doing, trying to influence the election, they are doing exactly what they accuse others of doing, spreading misinformation.
Take this, but I actually have heard reports about it on the other networks and everything along those lines. So there have been some people that have brought up this question, including some analysts on some of the networks. So I can't necessarily agree that they are not covering what people perceive to be a conflict of interest. And along those same lines, Nick, I know some people that are lawyers and prosecutors, and some of them are actually in the space of even being in bed with some of the folks that they are prosecuting. Because I know some even here in Durham that were going very hard against some of the drug pens and some of the drug lords, but then some of the young ladies and even some of the young men and even some of the middle class men and middle class ladies were literally dating some of the folks that they were actually going after. So this whole conflict of interest in the judicial court is one that I would say runs rampant and all along those lines, because there are a number of those that this happens on a regular basis, whether we want to admit it or not. Because I can name some folks that are right here in Durham where I live that literally on one hand, we're prosecuting some people, and on the other hand, we're laying in bed with some of the same folks that they might have been going after in terms of witnesses and all along those lines. And I'm sure you've seen it too, Adam. Let's be real.
Unfortunately, yes.
When it exists, when a defendant's liberty is at stake, it violates due process and the basic tenets of our Constitution. And the fact that Alvin Bragg would bring a criminal prosecution against a former president for a trashy affair he had with a porn star is disgusting. New York should be ashamed. It's an embarrassment.
So I have a question for Adam. So you say, you bring up weaknesses in the case. Do you think the DA and the prosecutors offered Trump a plea deal?
No. I don't think they offered him a plea deal because it would have defeated their objective. Their objective was not to plea it out. It was to embarrass Trump, regardless of whether the case was overturned on appeal, if they got a conviction. And even if they didn't get a conviction, they tarnish Trump and they give the advantage to Biden. And their objective is not to win; it's to keep Trump out of the White House.
This is one of four criminal cases against Trump. Do you think any of those cases are strong?
Yes, I think the Mar-a-Lago case with the classified documents is relatively strong. I think the remaining two are not strong. And today, in Fisher versus United States, the Supreme Court strongly indicated that it's going to construe the statute upon which the prosecutors relied in Washington, D.C. to charge Trump, that it's not applicable, and that's going to ruin that prosecution. And in Atlanta, we know Fani Willis, that prosecution.
So what is Fisher say? How does that work? Because you mentioned, I don't know what Fisher is, and how does it wreck the what?
Because the decision will be applied retroactively. In other words, the Supreme Court is interpreting the statute's ambiguities, in a way that's going to influence whether he can be prosecuted. And if they interpret it the way that I suspect they will, then the legal basis for the prosecution will no longer exist. That's why I think that case is weak. I think the Atlanta case is weak because Fani Willis and the DA's office in Atlanta has been irreparably damaged by the allegations that look very true, that she hired somebody whom she was having an affair with and paid him over $650,000 and went on trips with him. You would think a prosecutor would know better when you're trying to prosecute the former president of the United States.
But what's the language of Fisher that you're talking about?
They're construing the obstruction statute they're construing what it means to corruptly interfere or impede a proceeding. And from what the questions were, particularly from Alito, Gorsuch, and even Jackson, they're going to construe it narrowly to hold that the January 6th protesters did not have a corrupt intent to impede or otherwise interfere with the certification of the election. I think it's the right result. Doesn't matter.
I've got a guest that is very much involved in the Democratic space, and I'd invited her several times to come in and everything, and she's always got some interesting things to say about Trump and others. She is considered a political activist here in Durham and everything. So I'm going to bring in Jacqueline Wagstaff, and she may have some counter arguments to your situations with.
Well, that would be unfortunate.
We'll ask her what she's got to say. Jacqueline, how are you doing? This is the World Politics Show. I know I invited you, and you're oftentimes involved in politics here in Durham and politics just in general. But one of the things that Adam was talking about was this notion of unfairness and just the way that the political system is construed against Trump and everything. And I know that even here, you have sometimes not been the biggest fan of some of our public interest groups, whether that is the People's Alliance or whether that is even the Durham Affairs and how they sometimes control things as well. But if you just want to maybe introduce yourself to Sasha, who's up there in Canada and is a former person that was involved with Russia and lived in Ukraine, and Rick Rosner, who used to be with Jimmy Kimmel, and Nick Valveda, who's one of the founders of this particular network and is a lawyer by trade. But Jacqueline and I always think of you as a gadfly in our community, and that is a compliment because you're oftentimes in the way of talking about people and what they are doing. So if you just want to share a little bit about your background and even some of your thoughts around the Trump case.
Well, Mark, I'm glad to be here today. I thought about you and I said, let me get in on this conversation. But, my background is I've been in these streets and these politics for more than 40 years of Durham. I was elected twice in Durham. I've been a part of this political scene for a long time. I've been a member of both political organizations, still currently a member, dislike how they operate, but maintain membership just so I can see what stupidity they're up to from day to day, basically, black and white. And I tend to be an independent thinker. I don't let a political group, dictate who and what I should support. I support what I think best serves our community and our most, I say, vulnerable population. And if that's not happening, then I don't support it, and I don't support them. Now, as far as this Trump unfairness, I just have, I've tried to stay out of this fray of this Trump versus this and versus that. But when I look at some of the things that he's been accused of, and some of the things that we've actually watched take place that he's had his hands involved in, if it was anybody else, any political person, any president, Obama wore a tan suit and you would have thought he murdered half of the Congress. And it just seems like this man, who I believe is just a grifter, I don't think he has an allegiance even to the party that right now has this allegiance to him. I don't think he has that allegiance to them. I think he has an allegiance to itself. And I think that what he does is he utilizes whatever's available to him, whether it be people, whether it be entities, groups, whatever, to gain whatever it is he's trying to gain. And I don't think he has what we need. If it was up to me, I'm just being honest, I don't think either of the men I really would like to see running for president. But because I know I have to put my vote somewhere, and I'm not going to go to the new party and all of that, because that's just a waste of time. I can't even see myself even attempting to think that Trump needs to go back to the White House. I mean, here's a man that has told us, and I've always learned that when a person shows you who they are, believe it. He's told us what he's going to do. He's going to take vengeance on people who think that have worked against him, period. And I didn't make that up. I've listened to it daily. I think every news outlet is something he's saying every day, and it's out of control. And that's not what we need in America right now. We need
Exactly. One of the things that I know that Adam has brought up, and I don't necessarily agree with him, but he sometimes says, and I know that Trump has said the same thing, that when Trump was in office, he did the most for the African American population than some of the other presidents, including Obama. And like you said, you've been in politics for 40 years and all along those lines. So I just wondered, what would your answer be when he sometimes will bring up what he did for the HBCUs and some of the other situations? So what would your answer be to somebody like Adam that points out the great things that he did for our community? Because that's something that Adam has brought up on this show several times, and I don't think I'm speaking out of school by saying
you're breaking up, Mark. Okay.
One of the few things. Sorry if you couldn't hear. One of the few things Trump did was the Kanye and Kim Kardashian came in and talked to him about prison reform and got his attention he did a little bit on prison reform. I don't know exactly what, but I do remember that whole thing.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the only thing I would say is it's correct that Trump made some comments about taking revenge if he gets into the White House. But what is cancel culture doing? Cancel culture for the last few years has taken vengeance upon anybody who does not share the liberal ideology that these people embrace. And it has harmed the reputations of so many and prohibited a reasonable and diverse discourse on matters of public policy. So to single out Trump really does not seem persuasive to me. And also, these charges against Trump are not persuasive either, because what these people are doing is precisely what they accused him of doing. They're trying to interfere in an election and influence it to get Biden back into the White House. And to politicize the law like that, it's really a shame, and it should not be tolerated.
Let me talk about one more thing that happened in court yesterday, which was Trump and his lawyers said that Trump wants to take a day off in May to watch his youngest kid, Barron, graduate from high school. And the judge said, yeah, maybe, we'll see. We'll see how the trial is going. If we're on track, if it's not bogging down, then yeah, maybe. But then Fox News and all these right-wing sources said, judge not letting Trump go to son's graduation. So that's a whole deal where there was a lot
That's bad too, Rick. They're just as guilty.
Of what?
Of spreading misinformation.
Oh, okay,
Misinformation.
yeah.
They
How
weren't
many
being
graduations
accurate.
of his kids Trump has ever attended? How many
Well,
graduations?
if you listen to Twitter, he hasn't attended
Ever
any of them.
attended? He has attended 0 graduations of his kids. Okay, do you know that or not?
No.
I don't know it, and I don't care. I could care
You
less.
know,
what he's
but you
attended.
care about little Barron, that he's not going to attend that little Barron graduation. He's not going to attend Barron graduation because he never attended any of his kids' graduation.
I'm not
What
saying
kind
he
of father he is, okay?
I'm not saying he should
Got
be
it?
allowed to
No, you
graduate.
got it? He's going to go attend Putin's daughter's graduations, but not his own kids. That's what a man he is.
Are you going to start insulting
the judge
Mr.
could
Putin
have
again?
said-
That is so
No,
rude.
no. It's enough. Donald Trump is more than enough to get us. Oh, by the way, his best defense.
Mr. Putin has been through enough.
You remember that his defense is very simple. All Stormy Daniels said, and she's going to say it under the oath, that she had a sex with Donald Trump, and that sex lasted 3 seconds. So if
So what?
Donald Trump, no, I'll tell you, here's the best defense. Donald Trump will put on the stand Melania and ask how much lasts their average sex. And Melania says 5 seconds. So here's the defense. It's 5 seconds. It's not 3 seconds. Okay? Not guilty. Free to go. Okay?
Yeah, you have a point, Sasha. Sasha does have a point, because things would be a lot easier for Trump if he just admitted, I had the affair. I had her sign a non-disclosure agreement, which she breached, by the way, and extorted him.
That's your
Um, and then say, I had her sign it because I didn't want the embarrassment to myself or my family. I didn't want Melania to find out, which is obviously one of the reasons.
Do you really believe that he cares about his family? Adam, are you out of your mind? What kind of family? What are you talking about? He's
Well,
about
opinion.
himself
Why?
only.
He's
Nobody
a family
else.
man. Come on.
Trump doesn't care
Look,
about
he
these
he
women.
gives lavish money to Ivanka. He gives money to Don Jr. He gives money to Eric. So he actually does care about his family.
All
whether
he has to
like it
do
or
is
not.
to
I
give
think he
them.
cared about his
He
wife
He doesn't
finding
care
Yeah.
out.
about these
Yeah, he
women.
has to
Yes,
give them
makes
all
sense.
his
Hold on a
stock.
sec. Hold on a
G-
second. Jackie said Jackie wanted to say
stock.
something.
Gives them
Yeah.
stock. His
See,
brilliant
the problem is
public
you want to
company
crucify
stock,
this
which is
guy and then
tanking all the
justify it
way
later.
down. It's worth nothing. You know what? That stock, Adam, for you to understand, if that stock today would cost not $23 or whatever it is,
23
just
cents.
$1 a share, it would be grossly overvalued. The real price for that stock is minus 10 cents.
Sasha,
Not
you should buy some shares. You should buy some shares after the show.
What's the
really.
deal?
Really.
But this is the
Yeah.
thing. Trump
Increase
You
the
know
value of
why?
the stock.
You know why Trump is against abortions? Because there is a sucker born every minute, and he needs suckers, as many as possible, to buy his Bible, his stock, his mags, his shoes, his whatever he has. He is a pathetic loser. He lost everything, whatever he touched in his life.
That is very
It's loser.
disrespectful.
That's what
very
he is.
disrespectful.
Come on, listen. He's complete idiot. Don't try even go around and say.
I think you're right,
Trump
though.
is-"
I
He's
think you're
complete
right about the
idiot.
abortion.
Wait a minute. He won the presidency of the United States. So,
Sasha is right,
I
though.
won't say-
Trump
Only in
really-
a country like U.S. It's possible. Only in a country like U.S. Nowhere
Sasha, you're
else
all right.
that
Only in
man
America,
would be,
baby.
would be even close.
Hey,
He-
Nick, just really quickly, let's hear what Jackie
He
got to say.
would
She
be
wanted to jump
one-
into the conversation.
I was
Sure.
trying to jump in about his womanizing. You have to remember all of his wives. First of all, he talk about foreigners. All of his wives are not American. He cheated on each one of them with the next one. The one he has now was the one he was creeping with when he was with the youngest child, not Barron, but the youngest daughter's mother. So he doesn't care about these women. Everything for him is just another accomplishment. And with this wife that he has now, if he wasn't trying to run for president, he probably got another wife waiting in the wing because this wife has aged out. It seems like when his women age out, he has to go to a younger one. So he doesn't really care about these women. He doesn't care anything about these women. He has these kids by him. It almost appears that the only kids that he really recognizes is the three oldest kids. Those are the only kids he recognizes. And then when he get with these women, why does he have to have these women sign contracts to not talk? When they have these relationships with him, they have to agree that when they break up or when he's done with them, you can't talk about it. This man is a grifter. His father was a grifter. He was a racist towards black people in New York when he wouldn't.
No, he
rent to
wasn't.
black
No, he
people.
wasn't.
He wouldn't rent to black
He
people.
was sued by the DOJ
He
for
was
racist
sued. He
renting.
created Trump University, which was a fraud. He's a fraud, and he uses people, and he uses the most vulnerable people that always look at the people that are running behind him now. That no matter they say, "Give me Trump" or "Give me death," they don't care what he does. Like he said, he could shoot somebody in the middle of Fifth Avenue, and they wouldn't do anything to him because these people need something to attach themselves to. And Trump is it right now. And for me, I think Trump, what he did was by becoming the president, he opened up the floodgates to racism like we've never seen it before because he is a racist. And he has allowed for the Klan to rear their ugly head again and be out here and have a platform, and they have a king that allows them to do it. And he told them, if you do it, I'll free you. So you put me back in office, I'll pardon you, I'll make sure you don't go to jail. These people, did you not see January 6th, the same thing I saw? I saw January the 6th. There were people crawling all over the side of the building breaking windows out, going in there after Mike.
It
Pence
was
had
a terrible
hangman's
riot.
noose.
You're correct.
They had a hangman's noose, and he stood on the ground saying, "I'm going with you," but then he changed his mind. He said, "I'm going with you.
Ay,
Fight like
ay.
hell. Fight like hell." And what
Okay.
did they, it's messy. He's a grifter. He's nothing.
All right.
I just want to celebrate Barron Trump, perhaps the greatest White House kid of modern times. Let me explain why. Like you have to leave the kids alone. Like they made fun of the way Amy Carter looked, the way the Clintons' kid looked. They made fun of Bush's kids for like partying and sneaking out of the White House, for Obama's kids for smoking. But the only thing we know about Barron Trump is he's very tall. He's 6'7". And that's great because I can tweet all day long making jokes about, that Trump doesn't need to go to graduation, that his kid who is 7'4" can be seen graduating from space, so which is harmless, like it's not hurting.
That's why he was a writer for Jimmy Kimmel.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
That's a Jimmy Kimmel line.
I like being able to make a joke about somebody without it being cruel.
Hey, speaking
Well,
of that,
listen,
and everything,
If I
really
listened
quickly,
to
sorry.
that diatribe against Donald Trump just now, I mean, God, you'd think he was worse than Satan. Trump, a racist? Well, what was he doing at Chick-fil-A several days ago?
Pandering
Putting on
to
a
get
show.
black votes. He
Putting on a
was a
show.
Chick-fil-A.
Do you know that he
He
hired
was-
African Americans and more women in his
Female
company?
wasn't even real.
but not
You know
in
that the
public facing
African-American employment rate
positions.
was lower
At his-
in history.
at his-
on the-
At his
Do you know he
casino.
signed the First Step Act, which benefited African Americans? These diatribes against Trump, that he's a racist, a fraud, a horrible human being. He's
He
a
can be
complex
both.
human
He
being.
ran the ads
Laws.
against the Central Park Five.
But so is everybody.
Not most people did not take out full page newspaper ads.
Look at what powerful men do. They cheat. They are flawed people, but they're not all bad. They're complicated, and it's more nuanced than you're representing.
Fine, it's nuanced, but still, it doesn't get rid of the bad parts of his history. Where, yeah, he may have hired black people for his casinos, but he didn't want them out on the casino floor. He didn't like having a black roulette wheel spinner. And
Why did the NAACP honor him in the 80s?
But they were
he did
crazy
some
too.
stuff. But he's a mix. But he's done a lot of.
Right, he's a mix.
Hold on, he was first sued, investigated by the FBI, and sued by the DOJ in 1973 for he and his dad for not renting to black people. And he settled. He didn't, So yeah, he's got, he's. Remember Donald Sterling, who owned the LA Clippers?
Mhm.
Vaguely.
Yeah, he was a mix. He was like, there's old guy racism, which is like it's old school, like that they're steeped in. Donald Trump, I'm sure, has told racist jokes and he's steeped in. Oh, he's going to be 78 in June, and he's steeped in old racial attitudes.
And guess what you have? And guess where the racism is today? How many times do you hear people at universities or politicians talk about white males and their privileges and make these generalizations? You don't think that that's racist? Racism exists, but guess what?
As a white guy, I will be okay. I've gotten away with a ton of things that I wouldn't have gotten away with.
Well, I'm against racism no matter who it's directed at.
Yeah, but
Hey,
no,
Adam,
that's
just
kind of
really
a
hold on
whole-
a second.
I don't
Adam,
like
just
that
really-
argument because,
Adam,
like,
just
you
really
might-
quickly, because one of the things I've heard you said before is you sometimes criticize the fact that a lot of African Americans are living in single family households and all along those lines. So I just wanted your thoughts around that, Jackie, because I do know that that's something that he has brought up before, is this notion that we are too often in single family households and that is part
That
of
is not true. That is a myth. You see a lot of it. It's what happens is it's like welfare. They make the face of welfare always seem to be black, when statistically the numbers show that there are more white Americans that are utilizing government subsidies like food stamps, housing vouchers, and all of that than any black person. But the face of it always falls on black people, so it is assumed that black people are living off the system. So when it comes to housing, they say the same thing. That is not true. I I raised my son in a two-parent home. Now, we are not together now, but they grew up in a two-parent home. They weren't in a single mother home. And we need to stop saying that because that is not true. Sometimes people are not married, but for the most part in black households, there is a male figure along with a female figure in the household. Sometimes they're not the best of they may not be the shining examples of who we think they should be, but they're there. So when people put that analogy out there that the majority of us are out here single mothers and single family houses, that is not true. And the numbers.
Well, I just want to clarify to Mark. Mark, I want to be careful about this. I never criticized black people for single parent families. What I said was statistics show that 73% of black children grow up in single parent families. I wasn't criticizing. I was citing a statistic, and I said that single parenthood, whether you're black or white or Hispanic or whatever, tends to lead to less optimal outcomes. And I never said that black people were, predominantly reliant on welfare or the system. So I don't want to be encompassed in those racial stereotypes.
You want to know why I don't believe that what you say, and you can have all the numbers in the world. Most of your mass shooters that have shot up schools and killed numerous amounts of kids and adults, they came from two-parent households, from good income that was supposed to be the cream of the crop, white kids that were supposed to be able to grow up and go to college and do all of these wonderful things. And the minute a black person is in a single household relationship, oh, those kids are just going to turn out to be the worst.
Well, it's true. It's true that the overwhelming majority of mass shooters are white, but the problem is that the overwhelming majority of deaths are not from mass shootings, they're from handguns. So I don't agree with that analogy.
Okay, since we discussed Trump so much, I think it's a breaking news and it's very, very important thing. Remember that he has put a few days ago a bond for $175 million. Well, it's just been discovered today, broke the news, that bond is no good. The back signature of that bond was from the other bond that provided him $100 million for that case. So now, furthermore, that bond company that used now, it's not licensed in the state of New York to provide bonds. It's not licensed to be involved in financial services. It's complete bogus. It's a complete Trump's another lie, another invention. And tomorrow there will be a decision what to do with this bond. This freaking bond has to be completely put apart, get his $500 million out of him to suck it all.
What is your point? What is your point?
My point is that there is a lie after lie after lie. There is all kinds of deflections. There is all kinds of miracles. And you on this program should really discuss it and understand what's going on with this idiot.
Hey, just really
so
quickly,
have you discussed the fact that in Trump's trial there was not a single victim and not a single penny lost, but this runaway judge, $450 million.
Matter.
Name one defendant in the world in history who's ever been subject to this political bias.
You will see how many people will lose every penny of his heart.
Adam and Sasha, hold on a second.
Shareholders are suing the board of directors of this scam. There will be all falling apart. There will be stock which will be worth 2.5 pennies a share. That's where we are coming from. And because
you should be buying Truth Social stock right after the show, because when it goes up, you're going to be rich.
Adam,
hey, just really quickly, Adam and Sasha.
Likewise, tomorrow at 1:00. Okay.
Yeah, Adam and Sasha, just really quickly along those same lines, because I want to bring up something that Jackie kind of alluded to, and definitely you have brought it up before, Nick, and everything, which is that sometimes people are feeling that particular parts of our society are beholden to one party versus another. And I did hear Jackie say it, and she said it before in some public environments that I've heard her at, that she is definitely probably strongly Democratic and has run in the Democratic Party, but she's also got some friends that are in the Republican side as well. So I just wonder, do we sometimes depend too much on being too beholden on one party and when we are dealing with issues, whether that is local, national, or even international? So Jackie, I just wanted your take on this, because I know that Nick used to belong to one party, now he switched to another, and he's now thinking about moving to another part of the world and everything. But
Right.
your take.
I was a part of.
See you in
council.
Spain.
I was a part of city council when there were 13 members and 5 were Republicans. And who did I get my best work out of? Those 5 Republicans. Those Democrats that were sitting up there with me, you know, they were all right, but I did a lot more with the 5 Republicans. And I've been a Democrat all my life, ever since I voted for Jimmy Carter in my first election when I was 17 and a half years old. So I've been in this party for a long time, but I am very disheartened and disenchanted with this party. I wish that there was something I could do that wouldn't allow me to be in any of these parties, and you can't do independent, because I enjoy organizing in my precinct, and independents won't allow me to do that, so I have to choose a side. I really don't want to choose a side. I want to choose good people. And I have dealt with some Republicans that have been some good people. I still have some good Republican friends, and we may disagree on our views about different things, but we're able to find common ground even in those disagreements. But what I'm seeing with this whole Trump MAGA movement is Trump or none. That's how they believe. Like, you have to believe what he says. No matter whether it's a lie or if it's just him fabricating or him embellishing things, you have to believe it, or you're in the wrong.
Hey, Jackie, just really quickly along those same lines, and we're winding down and everything. But one of the things that people have complained about in this particular political season is the age of both candidates. And you have run for office. You've even run for office when you have been an older citizen yourself as well. So I was wondering your take on this notion, because even in our local organizations, we have some folks that are wanting to hear more of the youth voice and not necessarily hear the voice of those in their 80s and 70s. And we know that even some of these organizations are run by those that are older. But I just wanted your take on.
We can't discard that wisdom. I think that's the wisdom that we have to continue to have, and we have to keep it where we can utilize it. Now, people act like Trump is a 50, 60-year-old man. Trump is only, a couple of years younger than Biden? And I'm like, he acts like he has something that he's doing, taking some pills or something that makes him more viral than both of them are 2 old men, 2 old white men. And at this point, I think that whether you're 60 or 18 or whatever, I think we're just looking for some newer candidates. And I don't care if it's if it's a 70-year-old candidate that I believe that can do the job and can do the job well and be able to bring people together. I'm all down for that. But I don't want a 75, 80-year-old person that has one foot. I don't want a Thorm Thurman. I don't want them to be wheeling that person into the chamber to try to do the business of the people, and basically you doing business on yourself in a wheelchair. That's what I don't want. I want somebody, whether you're
Mark.
Yes.
I have to unfortunately leave now because I'm teaching a class in just a couple minutes. But Jacqueline, it was really nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
And hope to see you again, and we'll see you all on Thursday.
All right. Yeah, the next show will be Thursday. Maybe Jack
Thanks,
will be
guys.
at that
Thanks,
one.
Sasha.
Maybe Jack will be at that one as well. One of the things I was curious about, and just your take on this, is we're winding down and everything, and Nick may pop on. He's one of the founders of the network. But I know even locally here in Durham, a lot of people, but it's a national issue, talk about the notion of trying to do something with our Black youth, and particularly our Black young men. I know that even our current mayor here in Durham has done some things in that area, but I just wanted your take on this as an initiative.
Mark, what has he done?
He's done a lot of lip service. That's true. So maybe it's just lip service.
First of all, when he put that crap out there about Durham is dope, that's what's killing folks in Durham, dope. And then you're saying we're gonna sell some T-shirts and get a proceed to the nonprofit. Well, I need to know three things: who is the taxpayers taking on that expense to create those T-shirts? How much of those T-shirts gonna be cost, and who's gonna? You can't sell enough T-shirts to address the problem of youth crime and youth deaths in Durham. It takes more than a T-shirt. And if our mayor would sit down with people that he disagree with or disagree with him and come up with some real solutions, because those people he disagree with are closest to the pain. Those are the people that are knowing what's going on in these streets. Like I see it every day. I get those phone calls. They ain't calling the mayor. They're calling me. Miss Wagstaff, do you know where I can find somewhere to live? Can you help me with my son? I hear it every day. They're not calling the mayor. The mayor's so busy opening up restaurants and doing public relation junk tours that he can't really focus on anything, but he really needs to sit down with the people that may not agree with him, but are willing to sit down with him and come up with some real solutions. Because we don't need to keep seeing all this death and destruction in Durham.
No, agreed. And it's in other places. Rick is over there in California, and I know that Sasha's in Canada. So what answers would you give as we're winding down and everything to folks that are concerned about homelessness around the country and also around youth crime around the country as well? So what answers do you think are some legitimate answers that we can deal with to address those issues? Jackie.
Oh, well, one of the things is we have to understand that it's a holistic approach that you have to take when you're dealing with youth. No matter who those adults are that deals with those youth, there is an adult in those kids' lives. And we have to understand that before we can help the kid, we have to help the adult. And if we're not willing to help the adult and put the energy into the whole family and the adults that are in their lives, then you're really not doing anything. And when I deal with youth around Durham, I understand that I have to look at the whole picture and everybody that's involved with that youth, whether it be the man on the street that got them selling drugs. If I have to go talk to that man and say, look, I want to save this young man, can you let him go and let me have him? Then I'm going to do that. But how many people are willing to do that? How many people are willing to step out of their comfort zone and actually go out there and have those conversations with people that you have never had these conversations, or you're afraid to, or those are intimidating environments? And I know that because I know too many people that want to do things and they feel like dumping money into programs is the answer. There's 1,000,001 programs that have had money dumped to them in Durham, and ain't none of it worked yet. You may say one or two, but the kind of programs that we need, the city used to invest in them. Now they've divested in the things that used to work for our youth, and they've invested in things that we call defunding the police efforts. And so they need to get back to investing in our youth. We need to get more money into Parks and Rec and open up some of these youth centers around. We have centers in Durham that have been closed for 10 or more years, right in the neighborhoods where you have the most crime and the most youth problem, and those centers sitting there vacant. We got to open them back up and let these kids have somewhere to go.
That makes sense.
Jacqueline's right that you, same thing for homeless and for kids, that you need to know the individual people, and you need like frequent contact with the person to know what's going on with them. And that's a problem because we don't have the human power, the people. It's very challenging to come up with one person for every homeless person or every kid who's at risk.
Yep.
I think we have the human power if we go back to what I grew up on. I'm 65 years old, and what I grew up on was called neighborhoods. Our neighbors took care of us. We had people in the neighborhood that if there was a family that was suffering, we didn't have to go down to City Hall and put our hands out and say, can you help us? We knew we had a church, a neighborhood. In Durham, you got a church on every corner, sometimes 2 or 3. And why don't those people come outside that building and actually service the neighborhoods around them where they have all the problems? They won't do it because they're afraid. You have to get rid of the fear. And once you relieve yourself of the fear of addressing those people that have the problem, then you can get down to some solution. Homelessness is a symptom of other things. Most of the time, when a person becomes homeless, it comes from a series of things that get you to that point of homelessness. Now, if we can address those things before you get to homelessness, then you may never be homeless. Like if you know that a person is living off of meager means and barely able to pay the rent, then we don't wait until they're evicted and then say, well, what can we do for them? We got to start working with them now. I worked in McDougal Terrace, you know that, Mark, for over a year. And do you know I was paying rent over there because people were getting evicted for $50? And I just refused to see it. And it was costing me a hardship, but I could not see somebody getting evicted for $50. So it was like, do I pay this and give this person some relief, or do I just sit back and watch this person get evicted, and then they're going to be coming to me anyway asking me for help? I'd rather give up the $50. And it's just simple things like that. Sometimes we have to be very strategic, but also we have to be simplistic about it. We can't always think everything has to require a team of experts to sit down at a round table and have 50,000 meetings where you eat, drink, and meet to talk about the next meeting, but you never get anything done. You got to get out there. You got to roll up your sleeves. You got to get out there on the ground. I've been out there for years, and I don't think I'm ever going to stop.
That makes a lot of sense. Definitely appreciate that. It's time for us to wrap up and everything. Don't know if Sasha's got anything more that he wanted to add to what we've been talking about and everything, but we're going to wrap up, and we'll definitely be back on this coming Thursdays. It's every Tuesday and Thursday. We do World Politics at 5, and I would love to have you come back, Jackie, whenever you're available. So I'll send you to the list, and definitely anytime that you're able to come on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We're oftentimes talking about what's going on the political front, both nationally as well as sometimes locally and internationally. So definitely hope that you can make a return trip and share some of your insights and wisdom as well.
Okay, thank you.
Mark,
Bye.
please bring more Republican people on the show because they're all run away and there is nobody even to talk to. Bring more Republican people who believe in Donald Trump and all his scams and all his stock and everything else. I enjoy the show when you have more of those.
We'll try to get some of them on as well. We know Gretchen sometimes comes on, but definitely I'll bring on some more Democrats, but some Republicans, and maybe even find some independents as well.
She's very weak. If
Bye,
you
you
bring somebody stronger. Anyway, see you on Thursday.
Appreciate you.
Bye, Mark.
See you.